This weekend, I found Portrait of Ruin physical. I got to hold it in my hands. For the first time since falling in love with it, I was like, oh boy, I know that game. It was so nice, but I did not buy it because do you want to know what Portrait of Ruin second hand costs physical? It costs 9,900 yen over here. That's not an amount of money that I spend on video games. In fact, I have said that if I ever start going down the road of like buying these handheld Nintendo Metroidvania type games and making a collection of these $300 $200 games, like please stage an intervention. It's just way more than I personally really ever want to invest in my video games. So I put it down. I went back to my day. I've got stuff going on. I'm debating getting some of the Sony handhelds now because I've been really enjoying my PS2. And then I sat up with a shock way late at night, way past my bedtime. I realized 9,900 yen. That's what Mario Kart costs over here. That's literally exactly what physical Mario Kart costs over here. I have been debating whether or not to spend $9,900 on Mario Kart. I love physical. If I'm spending that, I should get it physical. But I was just saying that's a made up number I would never spend, and it just crashed over me like a cold waterfall, and something really changed. I just sat there in shock, and I was like, well, why wouldn't I spend 9,900? Why wouldn't I spend the amount of money that? Well, why wouldn't Portrait of Ruin be equally valuable to me as Mario Kart World? Even if Mario Kart World is made with like HD Hydroflex technology and it took 12 years, does that matter to me? Not really. I value Portrait more probably. And I had to contend with something that costs about a man, what feels like $100 to me as someone who grew up in America. 10,000 yen. You don't spend that on a single video game. Not unless it's your hobby to do so. This is not a video about Switch 2 prices. There's a couple other ones of those you can watch on the internet right now. This is about the world that is shifting. This is about the world that we had during the Switch era, when the Switch was the big console, and the world that we're heading into, and just not necessarily fear-mongering, just kind of processing, man, we had something really cool, because I just need to get that feeling processed. I want to talk about the fact that games need to be cherished more going forward. You can't just drop this money consistently, but in the Switch era, we could. For a lot of people, it was affordable to buy like almost any Nintendo first party or like big AAA game on the console that spoke to you. It was possible. And the amount of people that you got to share it with, that was different. That is definitely going to be different going forward. So it's not about the price politics, it's about the world being created, if that makes sense. And this isn't going to be like a fast debate me bro kind of video. I'm trying to slow things down here and just kind of soak in the moment, similar to the Silksong video. But even then, I think because tensions are just so high, I had some people coming into the comments kind of like charged up and like calling me words, not slurs today, but just like, oh, you're a doubter. You're a doubter. I'm like, what? I'm not anything. I'm just a person. I'm mildly suspicious about the release date. Yes, I agree. I'm a little skeptical of Silksong coming out like June or whatever. I'm not a doubter. I would love to be a believer. I'm just a person, you know? People are like, you're a doubter. You're in the D camp. You're one of them. You got D-pilled. It's like, no, it's not like that. So I've seen similar things with this. I'm not like, I swear to God, somebody's going to say this, but I'm not talking about a flop. That's kind of the meme ever since the prices got revealed. The Wii U era, the Wii U level flop. That's a meme. That's not happening. That is not what I'm predicting happening. It's gonna be like the 3DS. It's gonna be like the 3DS, but different and much more affected by outside circumstances, I would say. Even then, no, I'm not a hashtag flop girl. I am not in the flop camp. I am not a Wii U monger. Like whatever them is right now. Like stop. If I'm setting off red flags and alarm bells and making you jump to make a comment like you're one of them, like no, it's fine. In fact, I actually have a lot of optimism that I don't see shared by a lot of people about where things are going to be in like 10 years, to be honest, which is a big statement. There are concerns about the game industry, but looking at Nintendo as a big player in the game industry, and I'm not a shill either, fuck that company. Like, I'm just saying, I see things as changing for the worse, but I also think that based on patterns in the past, there's reasons to be happy. There's reasons to be hopeful about where we're heading. So I hope that's enough shitstorm buttressing to survive the video. And now I would like to continue with something a little softer. However, that said, the soft thing, I gotta unpack something that I just said. Yeah, obviously not everybody could afford to buy every single big name $60 Switch game that they wanted. I'm sorry, and I also don't think that every $60 game was worth it. Obviously, there were big problems with the Switch era. But I can't name anything else that I've lived through except for being a child during the DS era, where when parents were paying for games for us kids, where there are just so many people getting legitimately engaged with video games. That's the thing, right? I hope that's enough to turn down the tension in this video. I am really mourning that period where so many people, like, I have been listening to years and years of constant, like, armchair analyst type discourse about Nintendo. I know all the figures and stuff like that. Based on the sales, based on the games that popped way off, you got to imagine that there is between like 30 and 80 million people who got a Nintendo Switch just kind of, through one of the gateway drugs like Breath of the Wild, Smash Bros. Those are your 30 million sellers. Animal Crossing is higher. Maybe it's at 50 now. That one I've lost track of. But Mario Kart 8 got up to 80 million. And of course, most of the people who bought that aren't really that engaged with the console, but it's not like the Wii era. Like, there were so many people who were like finding their tastes, finding games they like, maybe finding communities and making memories with this console because, you slip in with Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart, and then you find your niche indies that are affordable that speak to you, and now you've got a really awesome memory. My cousin was one of those people. He hasn't owned a Nintendo console since his parents were buying him a DS Lite. Like, no, he didn't buy a 3DS. He didn't buy a Wii U. Those didn't speak to him, but he got it for party games or whatever, and he ended up finding party games that he loved a lot. And when we were at the beach house together, we played something called Boomerang Fu. That reminds me so much of like the Flash games we would play together as a kid at his house back in like the early 2000s, and I'm friends with him on Switch, and I have never had like a nerd connection with him, or an autism connection for me. I've never had so many people I can share this kind of passion with. But I look at his Switch profile and he has like 30 or 40 hours in the damn game. Like, he found his place. He's played like Overcooked. I played that with him. What is it? Moving in, Unpacking. I played Unpacking with him at the beach house. It was one of my favorite memories of the Switch generation. And, God, not to be a bummer, but he is not buying a Switch 2. Like, he is not buying a Switch 2. And if you're if you're watching this video, then you are a certified Class Z gamer god with probably a big dick, to quote the great Neryl. There go all the Hollow Knight subscribers. Sorry for that. You're probably a Class Z game master if you're watching this channel, and you may have forgotten what it's like to be a casual gamer. But holy shit, like, I don't know about you, but casual gamers did so much to make me enjoy this era, and what's casual and what's not actually got very complicated and kind of gatekeepy after a while, right? Because, like, I'll look at all these new content creators who were like beautiful cisgender women that got into gaming exclusively because of cozy games, and now like they've been in it for 5 years, like they're new to the hobby, but then all the discourse about their favorite games, they're like a tastemaker for all kinds of indie shit I've never even heard of. They have like the blinged out custom Etsy Switch. Like, that's a whole type of gamer that was so much more rare before the Switch. And It's hard to say. Like, yeah, I'm sure a lot of those people will buy Switch 2s, but having a bottleneck moment, bottlenecking being like a great narrowing of a community or a species, I learned it in biology class. Having that kind of bottleneck happen when the world, maybe not the community, but the world of Switch players was so vibrant and covered so many ranges from, like, yes, some blue ocean people who just got their kid a Switch to play, I don't know, like Mario Kart or whatever, or you have some aunts who bought it for when their kids come over. Like, they exist, but it's nothing like the Wii. Like, there's so many people who really found their footing, and I mean, power to them. If that's the only console they ever play, that's fine. The Switch gamer, the person who only has a Switch, is a cool fucking gamer, and we have been, just uh, creaming out of every hole over how good the Switch library is and how crazy your backlog is, and we've never had a situation like this where we have to ask, like, could your backlog, could that shitty Switch eShop sustain you for the rest of your gaming life if you only have like 5 or 10 more years left in you as a gamer? If you're some casual who got into this in college and then got a bit more passionate, like, could this be your only console ever? Could you keep gaming until you have like kids in middle school and then finally lose interest on one damn console? I think it's possible, and that's amazing. But that is so specific to just the Nintendo Switch, and that is not happening on Switch 2. I'm sorry. So that's like one part of the story. Like, I really love how much more diverse in numerous senses of the word it started to feel like gaming was once there were 150 million people that had Switches in their hands. It's just amazing. There were these visuals, there were these images of gamers, and this new, somewhat casual, somewhat hardcore type of world that I just wasn't aware of before. You were either like grinding JRPGs or obsessed with Team Fortress 2 or playing COD, but I don't even know where that falls into things, to be honest. But just gaming was very different when I was a kid, and I'm sure it was even more different before I was a kid, when other people were kids, or whatever was happening in the 90s. But even for people who were just enjoying another generation in the long history of their lives as gamers, there was a lot to be euphoric about with the Switch era. Nintendo IPs, I have a lot of feelings because I did become kind of a fangirl. I did become like super plugged in during the best years of the Switch generation, and I've already had like over a year to process falling out of love with the whole world, the extremely intense gravity of Nintendo games, and the people who make videos about them have flourished. A lot of new YouTubers came to be around the Switch, and there became just, new venues of places to talk about games, and gaming didn't have to just be one of these niches or the other. Like, there were places to really take new things seriously, like Splatoon became a much bigger deal. Splatoon just kept growing and growing. I think the Splatoon scene is so cool. That's a whole new thing. But even by the end of Splatoon 3, like, things started to chill out. Like, Splatoon 3 was just going through the motions by the end. There was a lot of amazingly funny stuff that happened. Even though it was objectively probably going to be the worst balanced turf fest thing ever, like the Tri-Fest Turf Fest, these Splatfests were shit. Like, these Splatfests were balanced so badly. It took like what used to happen with idle win streaks and made it way worse, because it wasn't just one idle winning, it was the same three-way thing happening, where for I think the first 3 or 4 festivals, Big Man would win at halftime, he would get beat to shit, and then Shiver would win, and Fry would get last. Seeing 3 separate things happen every time was awful, but it was so funny, and it built to things that could only happen then, like Fry finally broke her losing streak, or I don't know, just other stuff, like, oh my god, like, is Shiver gonna win the halftime fest thing, the 1-year anniversary? All these stories came out of it. The memes were immaculate, because there were the Shiver simps, and Big Man's impossible hold on the holiday festivals, and the eternal uphill battle of Fry, and, we had so much fun with it. But if they just do another by the numbers Splatoon, people are gonna play it, but eventually things move on and things aren't quite so magical anymore. Yeah. And aside from that, I think indies were very similar. Indies were, it's like the exponential growth thing where you get a trickle and then it builds to a deluge, however you say it, the water one, Deluge, one of those with games. Because there were very specific visible bangers in the early 2010s with indie games. After things got going with the kind of indie dev as we know them, like the single person who makes the super successful game that ends up on an eShop for some big name console and becomes a big hit because it revived some older genre that nobody makes anymore, and it has so much style and pizzazz. Like, Shovel Knight was the last indie game that could really be like the face of indies, because even by the time Undertale was really running its course, there were just so many other indie games. Even if Undertale was hitting these heights never heard of before, like, indie was becoming a more established thing. You couldn't really forget that Minecraft was indie, like there were all these layers. By the time Celeste was a hit, there were so many Celestes that year. I mean, Celeste is a huge deal. People love it. And it was so fun to feel like there were just like these falling stars of amazing once in a lifetime games during like 2008 to, now basically. But what was that? The same year would have been was Cuphead that year, or was Cuphead 2019? I don't know. But Hollow Knight and Celeste were just about the same year, weren't they? I always go back and forth on whether Hollow Knight was 2017 or 2018, don't I? It was around the same time, and they were such big games, but there were other big games, so it was super duper euphoric. But even by the time Animal Well is a big name, Balatro is a far bigger name, like things like Dave the Diver can become huge name indies, and they don't really make that much of a splash, pun not immediately intended. These games like Dave the Diver can have big followings and big crowds, but they don't really push out into any new territory of fan life. It's just another great indie that we love that's doing something new. Doing something new isn't new anymore, because every big indie hit does something new and makes a whole aura for itself, and this whole unexplored world. I never knew we could have a card-based deck builder that goes up a tower. Like, there's just so many, like Dead Cells. The thing I just described with the castle, it crosses over with everything. Fuck, I need to sleep more. The card one, the one. Hades, like, you can name all of these roguelites, and there's no chance that you care about all of them, but you know somebody who cares about each of them. There's just so many special games that it's getting less special. And it is special that we had this garden of special games growing. But going into 2025, like, sure, you could tell me that, like, I don't know, Enna is gonna become such a big thing that now Enna is like an icon of indie games. Like, whoa, that one streamer played Dream Barbecue, and now Enna is it's a deconstruction of the walking around and just finding things thing. And anything can happen, and I won't really be surprised anymore. I think that people might be freaking out right now. Like, do you think indies are doomed? Like, no, there might be some issues. I think that I keep saying it, so I might as well commit. Like, I think this generation of indies in the sort of like dark ages of AAA, indie keep going type of era, it might be defined by the struggles of finding a legitimate long-term like market for selling indie games. I think we see issues like Earthblade, died in the womb and stuff like that. That kind of thing might be more what defines the era. Like, how do you keep the magic going? But the Switch era was when we got this crazy downpour of amazing games every year. At least 3 to 5 indie games that like changed lives and like put people on the map. Scroll through fucking Fangamer and look at the games they cover and try to match what year they're at. Do you know a friend who loves a short hike? Because I do, and maybe you love it yourself, but like, there's no covering all these games. There were so many, but I don't think it was old hat yet. we weren't used to it yet. There were just these years and years of euphoria where it was like, oh man, will the wonders never cease? Like Pizza Tower, I don't go there, but like, Pizza Tower, like set the world on fire, and yet there's nobody putting that in like top 5 most influential indie games of the last fucking 7 years, unless you're a Pizza Tower fan. Like, there are so many games. Dead Cell, It's a Mountain. I could just keep going on and on and on. Like, Hat in Time. Anybody remember that one? That was a big deal for a while. It was amazing. I sound kind of cynical. It was amazing. It was so wonderful. It was truly amazing. But now that it's 2025 and like Silksong can come out, Silksong's just gonna be Silksong. It'll be great. People will love it, but it's not gonna change the face of indie. We know indie is great. We know these games are great. But the era of it like coming of age and like becoming a real heroic part of the industry, it's old hat. We're used to it now. It's gonna be just more about the games and the companies finding their strides and less about like, holy shit, did you guys know single people with their computers can make games just as good as the AAA dudes? Like, we know. We're used to it, and it was fun. It was damn fun going through those years. It really was. So at this point, I might have already lost you. This might be overly colored by me having a lot of my first experiences during this time. There could definitely be some people who watch my content that were like, you're wrong. Having Axiom Verge, Guacamelee, and Gravity Rush on the Vita in 2013, that was the best year of all. And I'll be like, hooray, hooray, different experiences, wow. But for me and a huge number of people by volume, this was, the indie explosion. This was when we saw more people than ever get into video games. And why is that a Switch thing, That's actually not inherently a Switch thing, the indie part. Switch hit an incredible balance, and it felt more fun at the beginning. The Switch was a console that it wasn't crazy to pick up for a pretty significant amount of different financial situations, It was pretty easy to get, as I described, like a couple appealing AAA games, and then that eShop takes hold, and there's something for everybody. And in the way that, like, I'm now going back and looking at, what's the best library I can make for me on the PSP or the PS2, you can make a Switch for anybody, and you can make it out of AAA games and indie games and not bust your ass paying for it, because, again, like, we hadn't quite hit this quantum leap of pricing and quality just yet. We were at a point where things were not easy. 60 was expensive 2 months ago, and a lot of freaking Mario sports games shipped with no content and were basically scams. All those problems existed, but in the realm of reality, in the realm of gaming, and you're turning around the dials, and it's buying itch.io games that your friend made for $2 on, your little computer. On the other end is just like paying out the ass $70 every couple months for like a crazy triple Super A game and all of its DLC. The Switch hit a really good balance where you could find really authentic small guy games, and there was a constant stream of exciting games made just for the console, and it was bringing together all these different series that had never been together on one console before. So the Switch was an accessible access point to all of the best stuff in gaming, and that's great. And also, the whole fact that it was portable was euphoric too. I'm not even talking about that. That's a whole just Switch One thing. It's expected now that games can be played in handheld or console, whether you do it on one console or you buy a game on your PS5 and then wait for it to come to PC and then put it on like your Steam Deck or like your super modded, even stronger one. To be fair, based on what I'm learning now, there definitely are some games that are too strong for any handheld, I think, or any handheld that cost you less than $1,000, but all of that to say, so many people found what they want on Switch. That's what all of these pieces come together to form. And it had a really fun energy. I got swept up in it. Nintendo had this perspective shift, and they took so many series that had so much to love about them and gave them exactly what they needed at exactly that time. And They hit so many people in doing that. You can't recreate Metroid Dread. You can't recreate, oh, we haven't done a new 2D Metroid since 2003 or 1 or whatever. Oh, we hinted at Metroid Dread in the 2000s and never did it. You can't recreate that. And you can't put it in front of, over 100 million people the way you can back in 2021. There was so much hype. There were so many Switches in hands, and they were almost like fossil fuels, taking out once-in-a-lifetime things that had been building for a long time and using them. The moment around Metroid Dread was so much fun. I mean, actually, I was traumatized and morphing into a almost unrecognizable version of myself. But that was a high point, and it helped me process those things. I really loved it, and there were just people who I never could have expected picking up a Metroid game, picking up the Metroid game. It might have only sold 3 million, but when you look at who bought it and stuff like that, it's a lot of faces in that extra 1 or 2 million, for a niche game or a 1 to 3 million seller type game. And then Kirby. You can only make Kirby go 3D for the first time once. Well, technically, there's a lot of arguable examples, but you can only do Forgotten Land once. And I had such a good time. That's probably my number one memory. It felt so special. Kirby had this buzz that it had never had. I had been a Kirby super fan for 2 years after being a normal fan since I was, wearing dinosaur graphic t-shirts. The last time. I might go back to doing that. You can't say that I won't. No, it was just amazing. People who I never thought, it was in the same conversation as Elden Ring, wasn't it? Elden Ring and Kirby had memes comparing each other at the time. It was being seriously discussed by so many hardcore gamers, and it brought in all the casual gamers that you could want to a great extent. It did a great job expanding the audience and being a big seller, a big Switch seller as you can have, and oh my god, there's a non-zero chance that if you're listening to this, you first met me at Anime Boston, where I did my Kirby panel. And I didn't really talk about Kirby Forgotten Land, but why do you think 100 people came out to see me when I had never done a panel before? It's because we were hype about Kirby. It was just such a special time. Also, hello, if you're listening. I'd love to hear from you. How are you doing? That was so sweet. That really started my whole hobby, didn't it? And then after that, I met kids at summer camp who were like, my older brother has that badass new Kirby game, and it's like, wow, never thought I would hear somebody talk about this game that way. And Splatoon was fun because it was Splatoon and a lot of people's first Splatoons, and then there was a Splatoon before the Splatoon where they did the octopus for the first time. I liked that game. Then there was a whole bunch of people's first Metroidvania in the indies, and then Zelda went open world, and then Zelda got less open world but added playable Zelda, and you can only do that once. And then there was Smash Ultimate, which was just the ultimate unsustainable mining once-in-a-lifetime happenings thing. Like, while this was happening, there was what's gonna be a lot of people's number one game in their number one series, adding some of the craziest characters of all time. You can't put Steve, Terry, Byleth, Minmin, you can't put Sora or Sephiroth back in the box. You can only do that once, and if that isn't the ultimate encapsulation of what was only possible during the Switch era, there's gonna be more cool stuff. I promise you that. I'm not being a doomsayer or whatever. I know the games are gonna keep being good, and there's gonna be more surprises. I think Animal Crossing is probably gonna be amazing. That'll be my biggest disappointment if it's not amazing. Kirby Air Ride is legit nuts. That's just crazy that they're putting so much emphasis on it. There's gonna be amazing games, but the people who get to share these crazy historic moments will be so much fewer. And man, that is just so sad. You can't do New Horizons lockdown, Doom 2020 fucking pandemic. Oh my god, you can't do that ever again. Don't do that ever again. There's a deep state if that ever happens ever again. So I think that's a decent enough place to stop listing remarkable, spectacular, wow, what a nice happening meeting of things from the Switch era. And, you're probably warm-hearted but a bit depressed right now, would be my guess. That's how I feel. But I have a couple facts I want to throw out, if I am going to add some facts to the discussion, that I don't see people consider enough from a removed enough perspective. Again, gaming doesn't revolve around Nintendo, but Microsoft and Sony looked like they were in a much better position at the start of their console generations from a removed place. One of the things I liked about the Switch era was I wasn't constantly worried about the demise of AAA gaming. That was good. I liked that because, Game Pass was popular for a bit. People were really gassed up about that. It didn't start to feel like things were so bad outside of Nintendo until recently. So if we're looking to Nintendo as one of the health indicators of AAA gaming, and if we hope that, as hinted at by a former PlayStation executive who said that his company should move away from cutting-edge graphics and towards gameplay, which I'm not saying you have to choose one or the other, but that would be a balancing thing that a lot of people would love based on the whole Astrobot cycle thing. That was very heartening. I think that we have seen a level of success in AAA gaming that people probably didn't think was possible. I think that one way or another, the other players are going to take notes, and they're going to, as they pick themselves back up from the AI and the just general lack of interest in their consoles and the struggles moving from Generation 8 to Generation 9. I believe I got those numbers right. I believe that they should also likely be taking notes and hitting the ground running a little bit better next time. I'd like to feel confident saying that. It might happen. You would think it's possible. But even if it doesn't, and we really have a dark era, Nintendo is invincible. And I say that through gritted teeth. They have an amount of money that is goofy doofy money. There have already been people doing calculations saying that they couldn't possibly go out of business for decades, ever since I think before the Switch generation. And they have money you couldn't fathom right now. It's not great. I'm not happy to see them becoming like Disney. I don't like that. But in terms of the future of gaming, things will go on. I feel so confident about that. That might upset you. It might be too feelsy, vibesy, and not factual enough. But Nintendo is gonna survive, even if we don't like it. They're gonna get through this. And if they get through this, which they will, they're gonna have an 8-year console cycle to prepare the Switch 3. Yes, I am thinking about the Switch 3. I'm not even joking. It might not be the Switch 3. Whatever it is, it probably won't have the Switch 1 library, which will be very, very hard to go through for reasons that I said. But they made a move here. They made a big move towards the HD gaming, stuff like that. HD gaming, we're 1080p now. 4K 120 FPS. You only can do certain things once, but you only have to do other things once. That's an important perspective. This is Nintendo. They've been using Xbox 360 level tech since the Wii U. Let's just say, the tech standard of the 360 has been relevant to Nintendo as something they are either using or aiming for since I was in 4th grade. It's been a long time, almost 20 years, maybe 20, not quite 20 years, something like that, maybe 20 years, fuck. But this standard that they're getting to in terms of hardware, this should be enough, because we just had an entire Generation 9 happen where what was the big problem? They weren't actually using the advanced tech of the PS5 and the Xbox Nantoka. They were still having people make games for the prior consoles because they still looked good enough. If they were struggling to use their power, Nintendo is not going to be desperately trying to make an even stronger console next time. I don't think we're going to be getting a Switch 2 Pro just because they have to render better jiggle physics or whatever. They're not going to have a fundamental change in their company ethos just because they made this one jump towards super duper NVIDIA Tegra shit. It's not, this is the paradigm shift. This is one extremely painful moment. The greed might be a paradigm shift, that's real, but in terms of what their aim is and what they're providing to gaming, I think we're going to be going through some of the worst years in AAA gaming for a while, because people are going to be pissed at just about every company and not happy from what they're getting in one reason or another. But I really do think that once we've had like close to 2 decades, if the Switch goes on for like 8 or 9 years, and then the Switch 2 goes on for another 8 or 9 years with the Switch in the back compatibility, that is such a long time, having so many games available to so many people, that ideally what bloomed in the Switch era will keep going in some way, and they know how to pick it up from the start next time. They have looked at unfathomable growth, creativity, everybody is making games for them, everybody is buying their games, and now they're about to get a taste of this is what it actually means to chase after every single person's fantasy about performance just for the sake of it. I believe that the third console, probably the third hybrid, will have a balance where they don't have to jump up. I really don't think they're going to have to jump up that hard, even if it is outdated technology. I do kind of fundamentally believe that it'll be an incremental jump of power that keeps prices at remotely the same as what we have now. In terms of my brain linking what to expect with hardware based on everything I know from my life with gaming to what you should expect for prices. Of course, external things could make prices so worse, but there's no predicting any of that. In terms of what this company is offering, I think we just had the worst hangover that might ever happen. And I know it's a famous thing where they succeed and then they blow up, but they only shook us off. They only killed the vibe because they really did need to get in the groove with these console power levels. Where they fucked up was being greedy. They are being greedy, but if it's like the 3DS and they backtrack, I'm not saying they will, they were a lot more desperate with the 3DS. If over time they don't continue to stay greedy, if they get humbled by our outcry and we don't buy games and we let shit not grow, I reasonably think, balancing optimism and pessimism, that they're not going to go much further in terms of price or power in the next 2 generations. And I hope that after this like scorched earth apocalypse moment, we can grow things back and get back some of what we used to have. I do believe that, just from the gut, just to say something kind of comforting. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Those are my reasonings for that. It sucks. It really sucks. I just want my Kirby Air Ride machine. I'm gonna be the casual. I'm gonna have like 2 AAA games and a bunch of indies. That's just how it is now. I really enjoyed, my god, I really enjoyed Skyward Sword HD. Love the socks out of it. Metroid Dread, absolutely amazing. Kirby Forgotten Land, incredible, perfect timing. Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3, that was great. Mario Soccer, that was a wonderful 2 days. I like that. Afterwards, Todic finally happened. Tears of the Kingdom, we got it. That was so much fun. Pikmin 4, incredible, a decade wait. You have no idea how popular that game was overseas in Japan. So popular. Amazing game, incredible moment. Mario Wonder, mind-blowing, so much fun. I will never forget how fun it was to bounce from game to game. I will probably never be able to afford that ever again, but you know, I think if we take what we liked about this era and we vote with our wallets and we wait until it looks like that again, I really do believe it could come again. I do believe that life moves in waves, even though things look so bad as so many different terrible waves are hitting at the same time right now. Fundamentally, maybe spiritually, logistically, I do believe one day things will realign, and I do think that this was such an extreme change that things will mellow out over time. That's just how I feel, but boy, just what a nice memory. What a fantastic memory. I want to know your memories in the comments, and I'm not joking. Just what were your favorite things you did, preferably with people? You know, what were the games that you only got to play because of Switch? What were the things you did with people to enjoy them? Were you having LAN parties with Hollow Knight? Were you playing Bug Fables with your Paper Mario hater friends? Like, so many stories. It was just a wonderful world. There was so much good mixed in with the shittiness and the darkness and the greed and the corruption and the anti-consumer stuff, which is threatening to wipe out everything now. But I'm gonna keep believing.